Microsoft's on fire. Again, you're watching Tech Strong. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tech Strong Gang. Today we have some of our usual gang members. We got Jon Swartz, Teri Robinson, Guy Currier, who will be giving us a report from St. Louis in the Supercomputer Show shortly. But first, let's get started with the Microsoft Ignite conference that Jon Swartz attended this week. And it seems like Microsoft's partnering with everybody and anybody one more time. I guess they telegraphed this one. They said they were gonna, not be exclusive with OpenAI, so they partnered up with Anthropic and Nvidia. But John, is this kind of par for the course for Microsoft? Because like sometimes I feel like maybe they built software that's kind of cool, and the rest of it is kind of like, well, they're a distribution outfit for everything else.
Yeah. It seems like that. I mean, actually this deal, this partnership, which kind of distanced themselves a little bit more from OpenAI, it's like this major cloud infrastructure partnership with Anthropic and NVIDIA. It was so important to them that they actually announced this before the Ignite show, which is their big conference out here in San Francisco. So they thought it was much more important than actually the products that Microsoft announced. So that gives you an idea of the scope and the kind of the magnitude of this announcement. And just really quickly, Anthropic is pledging to purchase or buy $30 billion in computing capacity from Azure cloud platform. NVIDIA is going to invest $10 billion in Anthropic, and Microsoft's going to contribute up to $5 billion in Anthropic. So basically, what they're trying to do is address this enormous computational demands of advanced AI systems. So that was first what they did. Um, and then later in the day, during a 3 hour, seemed like it was 5 hour marathon keynote speech and presentation, which just went on and on and on. They Microsoft unveiled some AI tools to weave AI capabilities into corporate workflows rather than treating technology as an optional enhancement. So they showcased a number of things bearing this IQ branding, which is short for intelligence quotient, and it extends from individual workstations to enterprise data centers. So, in a sense, what they're doing is they're pushing AI beyond the experimental phase, in their words, and making a stronger case. The measurable ROI is now within reach. And as you said, Mike, it was, I think, incredible, extraordinary week for tech news. They probably won the week, but I mean, just wait until next week when Google wins the week or whomever. If this is just, I've never seen a series of news announcements and partnerships where they're shifting alliances. People, we don't know who's in whose corner. It's just a free for all. And I think it kind of underscores this land rush that's been going on for AI, and it's just only going to accelerate.
Guy, do you perceive that any of these alliances are strategic? And I'm asking this question because, well, pretty sure that Microsoft somewhere is probably building its own GPU chip somewhere, and it's probably going to say, well, we're going to offer that alongside NVIDIA. And then they're also probably saying, well, we're offering Anthropic alongside OpenAI because, well, they're going to consume cloud resources. And, as far as we're concerned, everybody's all good with us. Anybody who wants to pay us money for hardware processing is great. So, from your perspective, I mean, how significant are these alliances?
I don't think they're particularly significant, except in the general sense of this is how AI is evolving. This is what we're moving towards, we're moving at. I mean, if you may remember earlier this year and last year, went on a little thing about how there's no such thing as an AI application. There's an application that uses AI. Even a chat is, you know, uh, you know, the fact that there's an AI powering the responses to you is it's a chat application. Um, so Microsoft is doing its best to control the entire stack. They couldn't buy DeepMind like Google did, so instead they funded OpenAI that got them started. They've been using the GPT models as they've come out, but Microsoft most famously owns the user end of all of this more thoroughly than probably any other player in the game. And I'm including Oracle and Google in that. Um, Google has a full stack. Lots of folks have a full stack. But the point is um, that Microsoft had to decouple itself, and that this has been developing for a long time from OpenAI as its sole source. And so this is one example of it. It's just chump change for them. What is it, 15 bill or something like that with Anthropic, right? That's, they probably have more in Satya Nadella's bank account to work with if they want to. So I think just in general, this is where it's going. Someone asked me yesterday, actually, if I thought that we were heading towards some kind of, sort of Microsoft, similar to Microsoft, some sort of dominant, platform slash operating the AI source or whatever.
The world
Um,
computer. Yeah.
yeah. And I said, I laughed. Now that might indicate, especially your reaction just now, Mike, that I'm just completely wrong about this. But from my standpoint, this is worse than the cloud. MCP, from MCP to API to whatever. Like, when I say worse than the cloud, the cloud birthed the universal, use of APIs everywhere, the so-called API economy, which meant that you could start doing mix and match best of breed stuff. Um, AI makes it even worse when you think about how MCP and about how agents work, where in a sense, any agent can kind of go anywhere and use anything and do whatever it wants to. And it can last for 20 minutes. The agent can last for 20 minutes for you. So the idea of somehow getting a monopoly or a dominant model or producer of a model or whatever is absurd. And I think, as usual, Satya is a little bit ahead of the game here and just saying, screw this. We need to make sure, like, tomorrow it might be somebody else. Tomorrow it might be Cohere. It might be somebody brand new. So that's the significance of it. As a strategic move, it's not about Anthropic. It's about ensuring that you are delivering the right AI experience to your business and consumer users, however you're going to do that.
To that point that the guy was mentioning, I think there's an IDC report that says businesses are going to deploy 1.3 billion AI agents and automate workflows by 2028. So, in a sense, what Microsoft is doing is logical. This is what they do. They cooperate, they work with companies until they compete with them. So they're just hedging their bets across the board.
Yeah, I think the word you're looking for is promiscuous. But
Mike,
They
wow.
are that, and that's sort of
I'm
typical Microsoft, isn't it? So
promiscuous is the right word, technically speaking, Mike, but for other reasons might not be the word you want to use.
Yeah.
and you might be
I
right.
do want to mention, I do want to say one other thing, because you talked about Microsoft building a GPU. Microsoft's not going to build a GPU. The action has gone to XPUs as far as that goes. And I know that also sounds silly, given that 80% of processing spending is on GPUs right now. Granted, but the XPUs, meaning TPUs, tensor processing units, MPUs, neural processing units, um, just a sort of a heterogeneous chips, a set of, not a chipset, a heterogeneous set of processing units is rapidly going to develop in these systems, especially and initially in the hyperscalers like Azure. That's Microsoft literally has I believe it's an MPU that they've developed themselves. Maybe it's a TPU. I should be better up on that. And that's really where what they're going to come out with. That's well known.
I don't disagree. But Terry, you know, so to John's point, thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands, even millions of AI agents. And wow, all this talk, couple of days long. And this whole thing about like maybe how we're going to orchestrate, govern, and secure these things, footnotes if we're lucky. What do you say?
Yeah, that again, it's like security gets the short shrift, I believe, in this discussion. It's not saying that they don't have some plans, but I mean, they certainly didn't, to my knowledge, share anything that was concrete about how they're going to protect all of this stuff. I mean, there are huge governance questions. That's and it just it started it's like it's mind-boggling, and I was thinking, didn't Anthropic just put out a report on, uh, a hack maybe, and it's
Chinese hackers are using
yeah,
Claude.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
using Claude and so I just I guess I don't understand, I mean, even why not why they're not just at least paying some serious
Yeah.
lip service to security when they come out with an announcement like this, and
Terry, I'm so glad you said that because to me, there's like this classic lag between all these announcements. They just bombard us with all these things they're going to promise and then pie in the sky ideas. They're probably applicable, but it's never we never hear from the customer or from anyone with a real concrete example because they're trying to digest all this and they're trying to figure out how do we cover our asses.
well,
And when you press the companies on this topic, they switch the topic.
yeah, and I mean, and then you have to pity the customers. They are being
That's what I
bombarded,
mean. Yeah, the
right? And
customers. Yeah.
and they're really having, I think, issues sorting through, but they're also having to make decisions and move on this stuff. There's a sense that they don't wanna be, like, left behind, and yeah, you might be right, Guy, there's not gonna yeah, Microsoft is not gonna be able to dominate. Doesn't mean that they don't want to, but it also doesn't mean that customers aren't gonna feel, some sort of pressure to jump on board before the security stuff is sorted
Why
out. So,
why would I possibly wanna bring up anything that might make you think twice about building and deploying an AI agent tomorrow morning? Come on.
Just build it and it'll break and then we'll
yeah,
fix
build
it
it and
later.
it'll
Don't worry about it.
and they'll come and,
Well, the
whatever.
honestly, Mike, when you told us that we would start off the show with this announcement, which of course I saw, um, about Microsoft's investment with Anthropic, my initial thought was, of course, you're always thinking, what are you going to say when Mike calls on you when you're asked about it? And what I was gonna, my first thought was to say, what the hell is even going on anymore? It's just you just cannot. So John, to your point, or my thoughts about what what you said a minute ago is I feel like a tenth of 1% of what is being done in AI right now is what's being talked about. That 99.9% of what's being done in AI is a bunch of people like you, like the folks on this call and other people we know, messing around in Chat GPT mostly, but also in other places, just doing stuff in chat. And when we are hearing about how companies are doing this and organizations are doing that, and now you can do this, you can have this 12 stage super agentic blah, 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 that's going to search all your email and give you recommendations as to, the nearest water closet for when you get out of the train in Shanghai or whatever, right? That is really that's the cool sparkly bits that we do want to talk about, the possibilities and everything. But for those who are watching this, podcast or listening in, they're still at stage
Yeah.
0.1
Yeah. Even if you press,
for the most part.
yes, if you press the companies who are announcing like Agent Force or what have you, I'm not going to pick on Salesforce, but any of these companies, ServiceNow, you really press them and ask them for a customer. If you reach the customer, they give you the blandest, lowest level, safest application that they're using it for. And it's usually some sort of customer service or HR internally, and it's very controlled and it's usually overseen by humans. So they're not practicing what they're preaching.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you guys. I'm experimenting with this stuff on a regular basis, and I'm getting annoyed because all my experiments are kind of eventually within about a day or so, I hit some sort of brick wall, and I'm like, this isn't quite going to work. And I'm hoping that somebody will go build an agent that will do the thing that I want to do. But right now, trying to navigate my way through prompt engineering and context engineering to create some sort of automated workflow that, by the way, is not very repeatable because, well, the LLM has no memory. So it's like basically, talking to my father-in-law who doesn't remember what I told him yesterday. So
So my main two takeaways here from this story are well, three, thanks to you guys. But number one is that there is a distinction to be made between the application and the use of AI versus the AI model and training and stuff itself. And right now, it feels a whole lot like it's weird. Another weird thing to say. It's like a commodity market. Like in Perplexity, for example, you just go and you pick the model you want to use. You can do that in Firefox as well. Whatever. The second one is the really excellent point that we keep hurtling off into the stratosphere without, keeping an eye or keeping our thoughts on the incredible security implications. And the third is, what is it with these keynotes now, John? I mean, like 3 hours. They're so long. And then you got one every day. Also, by the way, like it's no longer a keynote. One of the great things about the conference that I'm at right now, they do one keynote. And it's got two speakers, and then they're done.
So
So that's the
the
third thing.
keynote. So sorry, guy. The keynote yesterday reminded me of The Irishman, the movie. I almost, like I couldn't watch
I
it
know.
consecutively.
My wife and I stopped watching that after an
Yeah, so
hour. She was like, I can't do it
I would watch it
anymore.
for half an hour, then I leave, and the next day I'd watch half an hour. It took me like a week to watch it. I felt if only I could have done that yesterday, I would have felt as if I didn't my soul was crushed. It was brutal. Sorry.
Wait,
Sorry, Microsoft.
wait. I don't even think that these things rise to the level of the word keynote because they're basically 20 minutes of dialogue and 2 hours of
Yeah.
videos, right?
And then you have
Ah,
the
man.
third party come on and bow to the master. They do their presentation. The audience, they lose the audience by that point. It's like a series of 8 or 9 guests. I mean, Apple started this monstrosity, but at least theirs was somewhat streamlined, although theirs is pretty tired at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Boy, John, you need post-Apple traumatic syndrome therapy or something.
There you go. I would just love it if somebody somewhere maybe stands up and gives a keynote for 45 minutes, no slides, no nothing, and just straight up, here's where we are and what's going on, and this is what it's all about. But I would say Microsoft is not the only one of these vendors that has trouble, much like Bill Clinton, parsing the word is. And a lot of things that they're talking about are going to be true in about 3 years. But as of today, not so much. But anyway, that's just my take on it, and we'll see how it goes. But folks, we're going to move on to our next topic, which has something to do with this one, but it's going to be more of a Google take. We'll be back in a minute.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you, including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface, your personal life.
All right, folks, we're back and we're talking about, well, Google announced Gemini 3, which just happens to coincide with the Microsoft Ignite conference. A little suspicious what that's about. And basically, yeah. And basically, this too was telegraphed. They said that this was coming forever and a day, and now they're finally announcing that they have this thing. And there's also some interesting vibe coding tools, and they are calling it the most powerful AI model yet. And John, as you roll your eyes, the question I have for you is: it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like every other 45 days, somebody stands up and says they have the most powerful AI model yet.
Absolutely. So think about the timeline. So Gemini 3 comes out 7 months after the release of 2.5. Okay. Let's see. OpenAI's GPT 5.1 was about a week ago. 2 months ago was Anthropic's Sonnet 4.5. And so what the companies do is to prove their superiority, they demonstrate, or they come out with these independent benchmarks. So in this case, Gemini 3 sets the record, which is 37.4, which in context, I have no idea what that means on humanity's last exam. The previous record was GPT-5 Pro. So, it's all part of the hype. It's all part of the one-upsmanship. I think you said it well, and on the show notes is LLM leapfrog game. And again, in addition to this, I'm going to point out that the Google CEO Sundar Pichai gave an interview to BBC, I think a day before, and he kind of dropped this bomb about the AI bubble and how no one's immune, including Google. So he got attention for that. Of course, he also said Google is better positioned than anyone, so they're going to be fine. So you're right. It's just one-upsmanship. They all try to undercut one another. So be it. I mean, there's a lot at stake, and we'll see more.
Yeah, I believe he said there may be some irrational exuberance. I was like,
Maybe, yes. As we see these investments that are just outrageous from company to company, they're just switching alliances, switching partners. As Guy said earlier, it's just like head spinning. I can't keep track of this.
All I said was that's probably as intended. I mean, everybody's trying to, get a piece of this and declare superiority, and it's kind of, in my estimation, my professional opinion, stupid. So I'm sorry. So, Guy, that was, I'm sorry to have interrupted you for that brilliant insight.
That's far more insightful than 99.9% of my commentary. So
well, but Guy, you may have some insights on the following. So it's the most powerful yet, according to a quote unquote series of benchmarks that somebody created and tracked. That last time I checked, I've yet to run into a benchmark that actually reflected any real world activity. So, what is the definition of, most powerful what, according to whom, when?
uh so the benchmarks are more or less um things like, tokens per second, and query depth and length of, or size of context window, and like that sort of thing. Actually, that's not a last one's more like a claimed feature than a benchmark. All of your points are correct. That um, real world experience with a new model that scores really, really well. It does reflect that score. But one thing that is not commonly understood is this sort of recursive mechanism by which, maybe it's more commonly understood than you realize. Like, remember, the application uses the model. The model itself, they started out as sort of what you call feed forward models, where there's input and then output, and very quickly became recursive in how they operated, so that not only could they take larger and larger context windows, meaning they took a lot more input. And by the way, a lot of that input you don't even see. You put in a prompt, and then whatever application or chat you're using adds. It's not just RAG, so-called RAG. Like, there could be all kinds of additional context added to help you with. That's one of the way Perplexity works. Most of them work this way to make the output look better. So the model doesn't see any of that. It doesn't know which is yours and which is supplied by the application. Anyway, long way of saying that there is a lot more complexity in how these models work than there used to be, and they as indicated in Google's release, all of these benchmark scores and everything, including the intelligence score and everything else, are ways to reflect that it's not just simply doing a single pass. It's doing what you might think of as several passes of the same thing, breaking down the prompt, organizing it a little bit, running the different parts of the prompt through different stages before providing an output even to the application, let alone to you. I actually, unlike what we were talking about earlier with Microsoft announcement, where I was going, what the heck is even going on here anymore? Mike, I got a funny feeling of deja vu that maybe you had as well, seeing this announcement, which is like, hey, I know what this is like. This is like the old chip wars. Now we're going to have all the models coming out and saying, I've hit 61 gigaflops. I've hit 61 to 62 gigabits, whatever's like, and so on and so on. And that just feels nicely familiar. We can maybe settle in a little bit to just watching these folks go in and say, no, mine is bigger. No, 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 mine is bigger. No, mine is taller. Mine is deeper. And that actually is a welcome development, because if the different models are just starting to, and the companies that produce them are starting to just compare themselves by size and speed and that sort of thing, then that helps us take them as a little bit more of a commodity play. I mean, which one really is better at coding? Is it Gemini, or is it Claude, or is it whatever? Who knows? We never get to use these models directly anyway. We use the applications that use the models. And there's a lot in that experience that's due to the application.
I have heard a new phrase, and the new phrase is called token fatigue, and it comes in two forms. One is I created something that was so complex that I ran it up against the LLM, and it takes that LLM forever to do it. So then I got to take my next thing and move it up to the next model. But by the time I run my thing up against the next model, it's so expensive I can't afford to do it. So people are like, I'm kind of, lost coming and going here. But I think we're going to get to a point soon, I hope, maybe, that I'm going to create some sort of prompt that will have some form of automated context engineering, and then we'll be routed to the most efficient LLM that's fit for purpose, and I won't have to think twice about it because it'll figure that out for me. What do you say, Guy? Can we get to that?
There's a lot of fatigue building up in the system. I think so. I think you're right. I think that we've talked a little bit here about how there's all this focus on the model, but what about the data? What about the quality of the data? It's not, there's a lot that I'm talking about training data now to create the model. I'm not talking about the data added to, the inference of the model. And then on the other side, I was just talking about the application. Well, listen, agentic AI is an application that uses AI. And so there's a lot of work to do there. And what I was just talking to one of the neo clouds here at the supercompute show the other day, and I told him that this AI moment we're in starting to feel a little weird to me. And that I don't know how to qualify it any better than that. But I think talking about concepts like token fatigue, or recursive use of AI data to further train AI, these are all things that can build friction into the system and help generate the inevitable backlash that occurs in every wave. AI is it's just going to happen faster in AI, out of which we will emerge with something better. But in the meantime, yeah, I think that's the sort of thing that contributes to that.
I'll go a step further. I think that given the amount of money invested in all this stuff and how upside down that is, that soon that context routing engine that I'm going to put in the middle of this is going to be pinged by various LLMs that say, oh, pick me, I'll do it cheaper. Come on, pick me.
Wow, it's like a Kubernetes based structure for AI. Oh man.
Uh-huh. Just think about it. And
Now I have fatigue.
And I only bring this up because there are indeed open source context routing projects underway that are going to have these kinds of capabilities. So stay tuned.
You are so right, Mike.
We will see. All right, my friends, we'll be back in a minute with our third segment.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back and we're in for a little bit of a treat. Guy Currier is in St. Louis at the SC show, formerly known as Supercomputing, and he's been there for the last couple of days. And Guy, we talked a little bit about what NVIDIA was up to at that show earlier this week, but there's a whole lot of other folks there. And, walk us through some of your impressions because, man, there's nothing like having feet on the ground.
Yeah, thanks. This is my favorite show. because its roots are scientific and research based. And it was all about high performance computing year after year after year, starting. Had AI related to it for a very long time, and that wouldn't have been generative AI. That would have been predictive or recommendation engines. I'll get to that in a second. But now it is a very large, also commercial trade show along the lines of like a CubeCon or whatever, where there's pursuit of development and inquiry and all that in parallel with technology and announcements and all those other sort of things. It's also one of my favorite shows because it only has one keynote. Just want to keep that. Last year, I reported also from on this program from Supercompute, and the big story was about cooling. Cooling was sort of AI, of course, was a big story last year. Again, I'll get to that again here. But as far as the sorts of things that are really pervasive outside of AI, cooling was the big story. Now, what we're seeing is what you might call a rapid emergence into the market of those cooling technologies. You had advanced direct liquid cooling systems showcased from some of the system vendors like HPE, Dell, Supermicro. Dell and Supermicro actually have open rack conforming or compliant systems on display, but they weren't the only ones. Some smaller vendors as well. I didn't check out if Lenovo had one, but now we're seeing real and the data center market. Incidentally, most data center providers are now enabling direct liquid cooling a lot more easily. So that's hitting ahead now that we saw emerging last year. One thing that seems relatively new this year for this show is the neoclouds are here. CoreWeave is here. Nebius is here. There's probably a few more that I didn't see. Neoclouds, in case requires explanation, are cloud providers. They tend to be global, but they are built recently from the ground up, so to speak. I'll get to that in a second, but they're built from the ground up to help host AI in particular. And the reason why I say so to speak is that a lot of them started out as crypto mining farms that got repurposed to help host AI. So the question is, why are neoclouds here at this show where you have a lot of tinkerers and builders and that sort of thing, people building high performance systems, mostly for research purposes, but also now for AI. So why would a provider be here? It's because these folks are also their customers, which leads me to the third thing I've sort of picked up here at Supercompute, which what's emerging now. So I said like cooling was sort of emerging. Obviously, cooling and liquid cooling's been around for a long time, but it was sort of emerging as this major force a year ago. One of the big things emerging this year is integration of distinct AI systems. Now, I mentioned that AI has been around at HPC for quite a while, mostly for in predictive or recommendation engines for things like AI-based job configuration and scheduling. In other words, when you're running a high-performance computing job to try and simulate, I don't know, hurricanes on Mars or whatever they're doing to help cure the world's ills. When you're doing that, the faster you can run your jobs, the faster you can. So you run a job in a high performance computing environment, and then maybe you need to run it again. You need to tinker with something and run it again in order to tune it and then get the kind of research you want. The faster you can do that, the better. The less human intervention you can have, the better. So that was a natural place for AI as a sort of a controlling system. But now what they want to do is they want to use generative AI in various forms in order to help boost simulation effectiveness, invent or create jobs or test schemes, all kinds of analytic related stuff that can work in conjunction with HPC. So that is real buzz at this show. It's on the main stage, just lots of sessions about how to build and integrate distinct AI. So there you're thinking about the neoclouds again, that's a possible source for that sort of thing. That leads you to another theme, which is smaller, but like one flash session here from WWT was very well attended on workflow in HPC, workflow out of AI into HPC and back, which leads me to the last bit of um, emerging trends, which is has to do with quantum. Quantum computing really looks like it's on the verge of becoming real in a number of respects. They have 150 plus qubit systems going into production right around now. 150 is a pretty considerable number, but to really make it work, you need all kinds of other systems which I won't go into here. Most of them have to do with error correction. That leads you to ultimately a 150 qubit system, giving you five effective, you'd even call it sort of virtual, actual, reliable qubits. 5 qubits is actually a lot. Doesn't sound like a lot. It's a lot. The way quantum computing works, what you're doing is running sometimes multiple problems that would take months on even modern high performance computing systems to run. You can run them in a matter of seconds. It's not. It becomes a part of an overall high performance computing system, and so the incorporation of quantum into HPC is a hot architectural topic here right now because these systems are starting to really go into production.
So, Guy, are people talking about making these platforms more efficient? And I'm asking the question because it seems like the number of research projects that want to be run on a supercomputer and eventually a quantum computer far exceed the amount of available capacity. And, for lack of a technical term, but the conversation seems to always be about, hey, stop bogarting that supercomputer and let me get my project on there.
Yes. That is a general theme that, as like you said, it's been a relatively perennial theme at this show because there always seems to be more. There's always seemed to be more work demanded of these systems than are available. But one of the so the at the keynote, there was one of these sort of vision talks was the main part of the keynote, and the speaker it pointed out the ways that AI can ultimately help with just what you're talking about. The analogy made was so bear with me for just a second, was to electric vehicles that the current model for like personal transport with vehicles is you have your car, you own your car, and rideshare services are a way to make that a little bit more efficient, but you still want to own your car. But when it moves ultimately to just being a service and you can use any car, then you need fewer cars. Even as the amount of energy use goes up, the actual number of units needed goes down. And so by analogy, Mike, the idea is that these systems can be built and connected together and used a lot more efficiently because they can be shared a lot more efficiently. Thanks to AI, there's a lot of work to do there. Um, it One of the sources of this workflow discussion, though, has to do with just what you're talking about, Mike. Is it's not so much about idle time as the fact that instead of it just being one of the top 500 supercomputers that you can use, maybe there are ways that you can use one of the 5,000 or so supercomputers available right now around the world to do your work.
Mhm. I'm not sure I can get that metaphor because when I drive, I notice that there's more Uber and Lyft cars out there than ever. And I've concluded that basically people who previously would not have gone anywhere are now getting in cars going somewhere. And so now there's more cars on the road than less.
That's the initial stage of it. It's when people start giving up their personal cars. And so the analogy here is when institutions start giving up their personal systems. Um, Not that they wouldn't build the personal systems anymore, but it's almost the distinction we were talking about earlier between the service or not, sorry, the let's call it the back end and the business end or something like that of this overall industry and market. And when you're building in this case, instead of foundational AI models, what you're building are foundational supercomputer systems for your own use for things, but also you're allowing other people in to use them, or in fact, you're allowing AI agents to schedule secure jobs in those.
So like a GPU share.
And
Yeah, it's an Uber for supercomputing. There.
That
I
is
just coined a new wonderful phrase for someone.
right.
It's
So
the Uber for supercomputer.
Who
last question,
will be in the next keynote you go to.
right. And you were at KubeCon last week, but we didn't get a chance to talk. But one of the things we were talking about as relates to AI at KubeCon, and I'm curious if it plays out at SC, is that there's folks who are saying you should run those AI workloads over on Kubernetes clusters because, well, the IT folks know how to manage those. And yet, when I go talk to the AI community, they have a thing called Slurm, and that's their favorite job scheduler. And they're like, you know what? We don't need no stinking Kubernetes because it's too hard and we don't understand it.
Slurm is here in effect. Slurm is dominant. You're right. It's dominant for workflow. It's dominant for job scheduling. It's dominant for all of this kind of sort of application orchestration in HPC and in AI. But mostly AI. There's only one neo cloud I know of, and I mentioned the neo clouds because they are at the forefront of these kind of build outs right now. There's only one neo cloud I know of that uses Kubernetes, and that's Nebius. So it's not particularly common. There isn't really a lot of support behind that sort of thing, but you have to remember, like, they're using storage systems that are really, probably showing their age, like Lustre. That's really still dominant. There's lots of storage, related stuff around here that is more advanced. So I think that moment just has not come, Mike. And I don't know if I'm kind of, I'm a little skeptical about Kubernetes as the ring to rule them all, but maybe that's just, overall hostility to anybody saying anything is the ring to rule them all. Kubernetes is definitely coming for HPC and AI, though. There's no question. It's just whether or not it's going to have the world, the world dominant effect it seems to have everywhere else.
All right. Well, folks, you heard it here. The one thing for sure about that show that Guy goes to every year, it's kind of where the cutting edge of research and AI and physics and science all comes together. So if you do get a chance to go, you should absolutely take advantage of it. Hey, folks, thanks for sharing your thoughts and insights as usual. And thank you all for watching the latest episode of The Gang. Please stay tuned for the rest of the lineup of TechStrong TV because it too will be equally awesome. And we'll see you again tomorrow.